Welcome to Fast Keto. I'm your host, Ketogenic Girl. Hey guys, welcome back to Fast Keto. I am so pumped about today's episode with Martina Johansson. You may know her from Instagram. She blogs under the account at High Fat Fitness. She is a 34-year-old master's in bioengineering and biophysics from Sweden. She lives in Sweden and she's a biohacker and a keto author. She is incredibly prolific, and I have seen her at various conferences and seen her speak, and she is just incredibly passionate about biohacking, about improving your health, about ketogenesis, about low carb, about carnivore, about all these different modalities and ways of optimizing for your health. And we had a fascinating conversation. I had to stop myself from keeping on and asking her questions because I could have just asked her questions for hours and hours on end. But we really had a fascinating discussion, especially about how to optimize your hormone health when it comes to fitness and optimizing your body composition. And we talked about the connection between steroid hormones, keto, and maintaining and growing lean body mass. And she is also a former fitness competitor, so I got to pick her brain a little bit about how and why keto worked so well for her when she was doing her fitness competing as well. Muscle tone, we talk about estrogen dominance, we talk about low carb and the difference between low carb and keto, about some of her favorite biohacks, meditation, blue light blocking, and how she hacks for optimal sleep. It was honestly one of my favorite episodes ever of Fast Keto, and I'm so thrilled that we're able to have Martina on today. So I'll put all the links in the show notes to her website and book, and I hope that you guys enjoy today's episode with Martina Johansson. All right, Martina, so my first question I have to ask you is, what's in your coffee mug today? And it doesn't have to necessarily be coffee.
No, but I'm Swedish, so of course it's coffee, but I also have butter and collagen.
Oh, that sounds really creamy and delicious. How long have you been doing that for?
Oh, I think I started with the butter coffee 2014 or 2014, I think. That was when I read about it for the first time and got curious. So at first it sounded really like horrible to put butter in your coffee, but it's really creamy and nice. So I just love it.
Yeah, it's so interesting because it really is just cream, but with some salt added. But we think of it such a strange thing to put in your coffee. But once you do it, you know how amazing it is. And it's really hard to go back to just drinking regular coffee after that, especially if I'm on keto, like having that, sodium from the electrolytes and all that. So do you ever, I know you're a biohacker, so you must try all kinds of different things. And I know you kind of take breaks from coffee sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. I try to stay off caffeine as much as possible, but I'm not very successful at it because it can be a lot of coffee when I'm sit in front of my computer all day. So it can be a bit too much sometimes. So I try to stay off it.
Do you find like you're able to ever do kind of like a happy medium in between, or is it you more cycle through like just it's easier to just do none at all and then go back and have it? Or
yeah, well, I think I'm at the happy medium right now, but I know that as soon as I get a lot of deadlines and my workload increases, then the coffee cups increases as well. So yeah. It's like I cycle through and then I go back to go cold turkey and I stay off it for like 1, 2, or 3 months and then I come back to it.
Yeah, I found it really interesting, and I took a month off of coffee in January, and what I found interesting is I didn't notice any negative side effects or withdrawal symptoms for the first time. And I think it's because I'm in the pattern of adding sodium to my food every day and supplementing with a lot of electrolytes from keto. And so it reduced some of the impact of overcompensating that I was doing before by adding too much water, which was giving me headaches. So it was really nice to not have any headaches to deal with, because that's always the thing that breaks me. I'm like, oh no, I can't do it. And like, I'll go back after a day. But what I did notice is that when I went back on coffee, that I will feel sleepier and more sluggish in the morning if I haven't had it. And like today it's 1:15 here and I'm having my first cup because I'm trying to not depend on it so much, like as a way to wake me up in the morning. Like I would rather find other ways to, just wake me up, because there is that dependence and those cycles that I'm fascinated by.
Yeah, but that's like the one thing that gets me up in the morning, like
I know, right?
to have that first cup of coffee, because I wake up really, really early, like 4 a.m., 5 a.m.
Wow.
I love my early mornings. And without the coffee, I just see no point in getting up like before 9. So.
Yeah, I know. Well, because my favorite thing, do you linger in bed at all, or do you just like get up and go?
If I'm off caffeine, I can linger in bed like for like many hours. But if I know I can have my cup of coffee, I just go straight up, and I know, okay, I feel like shit right now, but I will have my coffee in like 10 minutes, so I will be okay.
It's so funny. Yesterday, I was doing some writing about motivation and pleasure, and it actually was one of the last things that I studied right before I did my exams. So it's kind of fresh in my head. And it is amazing how wired we are for pleasure and motivation. And I know a lot of people, myself included, just the thought, the aroma of that first coffee, it'll drive me to do a lot of things.
Yeah.
So you recently completed your master's studies in biochemistry, and you're currently doing a PhD. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, I'm 34, so it was a while ago that I completed my master's degree. So I've been working for a while, and I just recently started my PhD studies last year, actually, because I have always wanted to go for a PhD, but I wasn't sure if I would be a good fit for it. But then I guess the stars aligned and the opportunity opened up, and now I'm here.
That's so exciting and fantastic and really amazing. I think 34 is still pretty young to be, pursuing a doctorate. So I'm really impressed that you've accomplished so much at such a young age. And I'm curious what brought you first to keto, and also I'll ask you after what brought you to biochemistry. But what kind of first brought keto coffees and keto and all that on your radar?
Well, I had some mental and physical health issues when I was younger. And when I studied at university, I had a professor that talked a lot about the connection between food and health and inflammatory foods and stuff like that. So that really opened my eyes to the fact that what we eat can actually affect our health in so many ways. I was completely oblivious to that before. So I was a vegan at the time, and nothing was working in my life. So I didn't really have much to lose. So I just decided to try a low carb approach, just low carb, just removing as much junk as possible. But I didn't know about like adding fats or anything in the beginning. So I was just on a strict like low carb, low calorie, low everything diet. And even though it was better than just eating a lot of sugar and caffeine, I guess it wasn't sufficient enough to sustain me. So I just lost a lot of weight and got even more sleep problems. So eventually I learned that you need to get your calories from somewhere, and fat is actually a pretty good calorie source. It's pretty neutral for the body, and it's very sustainable, and it keeps your blood sugar in check. And eventually I transitioned from this vegan diet into a low carb, high fat diet, and my health improved during that transition. And it continues to improve to this day. And now it's about 10 years ago.
That's amazing. And how long were you vegan for?
I was vegan for 2 years, but I was vegetarian for about 8 years. So it was about 10 years without much animal products whatsoever, mostly refined sugars and starch and junk food and basically everything we're not supposed to eat as humans.
I was vegetarian for 17 years and vegan for a small part of it. And I think that I'm still I think that I'm making up for all the protein that I was missing. Now if I were to go back and do vegetarian now, it would look so different compared to the way that, I was eating then, just so high carb, and it would look very, very different from what it was when I first started, and I didn't know enough about what my body actually needed and all that. It's amazing. You initially found keto as you were kind of researching, and it was health issues. Was it mostly related, you were saying, to sleep?
No, I was constantly sick when I studied at the university. I had chronic throat infections, IBS, and I was severe anxiety, burst of depression, and it was just not many things were working that well in my life at that time. So it was I struggled with a lot of things. So sleep was one thing, but it was basically my whole being was about to collapse. So I was kind of desperate to find some kind of solution to continue to live.
Did you start studying biochemistry when you were just starting out in university? Had you always been interested in science?
Yeah, I've always been interested in science, but I wasn't really sure if it would be a good fit for me, if I was smart enough. I had pretty low self-esteem at the time when I was school, but I just decided to go for it. And it was a really good decision because I really love biochemistry a lot. It's a true passion of mine. So I'm glad I choose that path, and it's given me so much back because I see that everything's biochemistry. That's my slogan in life. I can see biochemistry in everything I do. And it's really fascinating to learn about cellular biology and the chemistry inside the body and inside the brain. And you can just study continuously and just continue to learn more and more about yourself and how things are connected.
I find it so amazing, and I'm so happy for you that you made the decision to pursue it and follow it, because I know when I was in high school, I loved my biology course. I was doing, I don't know if you know that, international baccalaureate program, because I was at international schools, and I took biology as my higher level as a part of that, but I did not feel anywhere near confident enough to actually pursue it beyond that. And it's taken me all this time to actually get the confidence to believe in my abilities to understand it. And it's very intimidating. I think
Definitely,
science can be intimidating. I know it was for me. I always felt like it was more for men, and I just didn't think that I had the capacity. And then what I have since learned is that it's a language. And a linguist, I know you love languages too. And when I started to think of it as a language, I was like, oh, I just need to learn the language, and then I'll be able to use that to understand the concepts, and then, be able to speak biochemistry in a way. And that helped me feel more confident about it.
Yeah, it's exactly the same for me. I was also too insecure at the time when I started studying. I didn't know if I could make it, but it's really just like a language. Science is a language on its own, I think. So that's a good way to express it.
So I'm curious, I guess the reason I thought maybe you had done your master's more recently is I thought maybe it was kind of one way of, pursuing or tying in ketogenic kind of research and things with that. So I imagine you're probably doing some of that now with your work at the PhD level.
Well, not really. I focus a lot on inflammation and inflammatory markers. But I do clinical studies on patients with diabetes and metabolic syndrome. And we do use a low carb approach to help them. But my work is mostly like collecting the data and looking for like correlations and things like that. But I do see that there's an increasing need for helping these people with a lifestyle change that includes low carb. So that's really, really important. And I can see the shift that's taking place here in Sweden, that it's getting more accepted to use that in clinic care to actually suggest a low carb approach to the patients. So I'm really, really happy about that. And then for keto, I separate low carb from keto because I think keto is a bit more extreme because we're aiming for ketosis. And I would love to see that in like people with worse health problems, like maybe autoimmunity or cancer, for example. But I think that's something for the future.
All right, guys. Now, I know how important high quality food is to you, and being able to provide nutrient dense food for yourselves and your families in an economical way. Now, I always brag about how spoiled I am here in Prague to have all these incredible local butchers. But when I'm back in Colorado, I really like to use a service called butcherbox.com. Now, butcherbox.com, you may have heard of them. They are a monthly meat delivery service, and they provide incredibly high quality grass-fed meats in a really affordable way. You save because you don't have to go to the store and spend time buying groceries because everything is shipped right to your door, and you're also getting the highest quality meat possible. Now, ButcherBox is offering my listeners a box with 2 free beef fillets, a pack of bacon, and $20 off your first order. You can take advantage of this order by going to butcherbox.com/fast keto. That's butcherbox.com/fast keto to take advantage of this offer. I really love what ButcherBox does to save us all money and time, and being able to use their service is just like having your own local butcher and saving money, providing the best quality meat for your family. So check out that offer at butcherbox.com/fast keto. Yeah, and more studies definitely need to be done, and definitely funding and more trials and things need to be done with it. But yeah, I'm not sure where that will come from. Hopefully, right now it's really come from more of the grassroots of people just trying things out. And do you think that people in Sweden, I've wondered why Sweden is so ahead of the rest of Europe and the rest of the world in biohacking, and especially at the low carb, high fat. Europe itself is still more ahead of the US and North America and Canada in a lot of ways because we went like zero fat. We got so afraid of eating any fat, we went to the other extreme. And whereas European cooking never really, Mediterranean style cooking, French cooking, all kind of always incorporated, fats. A lot of olive oil and butter is just a part of the way people cook, and lard. But in North America, everything got replaced with margarine and trans fats and zero fat everything. But what do you think it is about Sweden in particular that has made it so advanced compared to other countries?
Well, we are very, very influenced by North America as well. And we had like a huge trend with low fat and all that during the 90s. But then we had some really stubborn medical doctors that got inspired by the Atkins approach about 15 years ago, started to treat their diabetic patients with low carb. And they got a lot of shit for it. And some of them lost their license, and it just blew up the media, and it got a lot of media exposure. And because of that, Sweden is a pretty small country. And because of that, it got famous, like this low carb, high fat thing. Like, oh my God, what's this? Like crazy doctors treating their patients with like a high fat diet. That sounds like just the craziest thing, but it also made it famous, and people got curious, and people started to try it out on their own, and they noticed fast results when it comes to like weight loss and health improvements, and like a grassroots movement formed pretty fast from that. And I mean, now we have like a huge vegan trend in Sweden as well, but it's still, I mean, the low carb trend is still going strong, and it's still growing, I think. So I think it's from that initial things with the doctors that started to try out like the Atkins approach on their patients. That's where it all started.
Now, did you get into Atkins back then?
Well, I guess it was something like that. It wasn't much information available. So I guess what the first things I found was probably more like Atkins phase 1 or whatever they call it.
Yes, induction.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Atkins induction.
Yeah, I found Atkins when I was in university, which was kind of in the early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
And I got really, really into it. I made so many mistakes. I did so many things wrong. But as soon as I heard this rumor that Dr. Atkins had died from a heart attack, I was like, oh, well, that's crazy. Like, he must have been all wrong. And I just like dropped it overnight and totally just went, I mean, I was still vegetarian at the time, but like I completely went back on like a high carb diet. And it's crazy when I think back that I didn't even really know that wasn't the case. And, that's all I needed to hear. And maybe I was looking for an excuse or I don't know what, but it would have been quite different if I had just, stayed with it all those years in between. Mm-hmm. But it's all part of, your individual journey and kind of what you learn along the way and all that. So what do you think has made you personally interested in biohacking?
Well, it started with the diet change when I went from vegan to low carb, and I noticed all the positive effects it had on my health, like both my mental and physical health. And before I had like a lot of anxiety, and I was like, my immune system was like, I got sick all the time, and I felt so weak and didn't have any energy. And just by changing my diet, everything just changed. And I was so amazed by it, like, oh my God, I switched my food, and now I'm a completely different person. Like, oh my God, is there anything else I can do? I mean, is there anything else I have missed in my life? How can this be so, like, what a game changer. I got so incredibly curious, and that's why I started to just read about like everything in this area, like everything from like supplements to training to like meditation techniques to everything, because it just opened my eyes to the fact that like it's not written in stone. Like you can change yourself. It's not like you have bad genetics or bad luck or something. I thought so, like, oh, I just have poor genes. It's like I'm not a very lucky person. I'm not that smart. I'm not that good at anything. And then when I could see that I could actually change my way of thinking, like, okay, I don't have to be this negative. I don't have to be sick all the time. I don't have to be like neurotic or whatever. I can actually, it's possible to be someone else that's better, like to function better and to be happier and more content with myself.
Yeah, it's amazing what a powerful biohack, keto and diet and just food in general, how much it can change. So I can understand that, you make a few changes and then you're just like, wow, like what else can I do? Like what else, can I try? And I know you've tried a few different things, and you like to also experiment with like blue light.
Yeah.
Can you maybe tell us like some of the other things you have tried and sort of dabbled with and experimented with in terms of biohacking?
Oh my God, it's so much. I always try new things. It's like meditation is a huge thing that I've been doing for a few years now. I think that's also a great biohack. And the blue light blocking, of course. It's so many different things. It's hard to remember if it's a biohack or if it's because most of the things I try, they just stick with me and become like new habits for me. So I don't really reflect that much when I find something new. I hacked my stage fright. That was a big thing because
Oh,
I was terrified of speaking in front of people. So I really tried to fix that at first with beta blockers. Beta blockers
yep.
and do like to try to perform and train my brain that okay, this like it will be all right. I won't die, and like just live through the like all the chemical responses in my body because beta blockers can't remove everything. They can just like lower the volume. And then eventually I started doing without, and now I can do like big talks without taking anything, which is really good. So I
That's
try
awesome.
to I try to just like solve my everyday problems with biohacking, and same goes for like training, for example. Like okay, I'm stuck here. How can I progress beyond this point? Like, I want to lift heavier or whatever. So it's just like implementing smart approaches to solve everyday problems.
That's really cool. And I can understand how, just all the different things that you've tried, the ones that worked well for you, they just became a part of you. They just became habits, as you said,
Yeah.
and so it's hard to distinguish like, wait, wait, what are the biohacks again? Because they're just part of who you are in your daily routines, after all this time. Do you have specific morning routine or anything like that you kind of intentionally follow?
Morning routine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I love my routines. I always get up like super early, like, yeah, around 4 a.m. And I have my coffee with butter and collagen. And I usually meditate for at least 30 minutes before I start working. And then I have my productivity window that's from like 5 to 10, where I don't move at all. I just sit and stare at my screen writing. So that's like really important to not be disturbed during that time. And then after like 10 a.m., like start checking my emails and things. But it's really important for me to block out time during the mornings, like from I go up to about like 10 a.m. I don't want to be disturbed. I need to be like in my own space and like get time for meditation and like yeah, having my coffee in peace and everything. So like it's not that I do a lot of things, it's just that I protect this time of the day with my life.
That's amazing. And it explains, how you're able to be so productive. I know you've written, a bunch of books and it's not an easy task. So, good for you for protecting that time, because if you don't, it'll just, get taken over by other people's priorities and quests and things. So, it's great that you do that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know you've done, in addition to biohacking, you've done, I think, some fitness competitions. Is that
Mm-hmm.
correct?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that, and how do you optimize for fitness today with your daily diet?
Well, I got into fitness after I started my low carb diet because before I did this dietary change, I didn't have any energy to work out whatsoever. So I was just very still and like very weak. I didn't have any muscle tone whatsoever. But then with a more ketogenic approach and I could go into ketosis, I start to get a lot more energy for the first time in my life. And I was 25 at the time. So I just felt the urge to get a gym card and start working out. So I did that. And just weightlifting seemed to fit me really good. And I was already super skinny. So it was easy for me to get like a nice muscle definition because it's mostly like illusion. Just having low body fat helps a lot in fitness. You don't really have to be fit as a like a bikini fitness competitor. It's mostly being skinny with some slight muscle tone. So I was just curious if I could reach that level of of fitness, how I would manage in a fitness competition. So that kept me motivated in the gym, because I noticed that I started to slack and I needed something that could inspire me. So I thought that, hey, I sign up for a fitness competition. Maybe that will help my motivation. And it turned out that, well, it was pretty easy for me to compete in fitness. It went okay. I mean, I didn't win in the beginning, but I was like third place, fourth place, and stuff like that. And when I moved abroad to Shanghai, I got picked up by a Chinese fitness team, and I got my pro card, and I competed internationally around China and outside of China. But I stopped that 2015. Then I just lost interest in it because it felt more like a beauty competition, and I realized that, okay, this really doesn't have anything to do with fitness. It's just looking good and being skinny, and it felt like, this is not really me. It's like it felt a bit too superficial. I'm not judging people that wants to do fitness or anything, because I've been there myself, obviously, but it just felt wrong to me to continue, because I felt pretty shallow, and I didn't want to. I wanted to do something with more meaning to me, like improving my strength or stuff like that. But I've noticed that now when I just train to be strong, I want to be as strong as possible, and I want to be able to use my body more, and I want to be fit in every true sense of that word. Now I'm still drawn to the fitness look. I noticed that, okay, maybe I am superficial because I really love my abs. I love my six pack. So, okay. So yeah, it's just, and it's not so difficult to keep it up if you just have a great diet and you're consistent with diet and training at the same time. Then it's not much work to keep a decent body fat percentage, I think.
I have to ask you a really selfish question. I really want to know this because I used to work out so much when I was in university, and then I really stopped once I started going keto because, I tried so hard to get fat loss, and for so many years in the gym doing not just a lot of cardio, but also strength training. And I never really got anywhere because I didn't understand proper nutrition and how to do it for fat loss. But now that I've had the fat loss that I want, I have muscle definition, and I'm like, I know that most of it is probably just because I have such low body fat now. Mm-hmm. But is there any way that any of that muscle tone, like any of that muscle would have stayed from that time that I was working out a lot? Or is it most likely just gone? Like, I don't know how much you have to do to maintain, because now, like, I want to get back into it and I want to build strength. Mm-hmm. And I'm just curious about muscle physiology and like what, how long does it last? Or, it's probably more a factor of just having lost the body fat.
I think you could have kept a little of your muscles from when you were working out, because that's like keeping your muscles. That's most hormonal thing. And since you're having such a optimal diet, I mean, you can probably keep a lot of your muscles, and you probably have from when you were working out at university. I definitely think so.
So when you say it's mostly a factor of your hormones, like maintaining your muscle, are you referring to like the peptide hormones or steroid hormones or both?
Both, I guess. I was talking about steroid hormones at first, but both come into play, definitely, to keep your muscles, even if you're not training. Like, keep your testosterone and progesterone nice and high. And I mean, you're still very young, so you haven't had any decline in those hormones. So even if you were working out like 5 years ago, I think you could still keep those muscles just because you have such a nice hormonal balance.
It's really interesting. I'd love to know more about that, because I know a lot about peptide hormones. I just don't know as much about steroid hormones. Like, I understand their chemistry, but I don't really understand the interplay of, like I get people ask me questions about estrogen dominance and things like that. And I'm like, I really don't know, how that works in the body or plays out. And I'm curious if you must know a lot about that from your work and just your experience in fitness.
Yeah, that's true. We focus a lot on the steroid hormones, like our natural hormones, like estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, to keep that specific fitness look, because you can't be estrogen dominant and have a six pack abs, for example. That's impossible. You need to be a bit heavy on the testosterone side, but not so much that you interrupt your menstrual cycle or get yourself infertile or something like that. So it's a very delicate balance to keep your hormones healthy, so you're fertile and you ovulate and menstruate at the same time as you keep a low body fat percentage. And that's usually impossible if you are following a classical like fitness diet that's generally like high protein, low fat, because then you don't get enough cholesterol to build your sex hormones. But I've noticed that on a keto diet where we eat a lot of nice animal fats, we have enough like building blocks to produce progesterone and estrogen, despite having a low body fat percentage. And because we tend to burn our own body fat and we constantly flush our liver with all these fats, and we're producing ketones, we don't get so estrogen dominant either if we just keep a very clean diet. So it's just a lot easier. And many people get confused when I say that I want to keep my testosterone up, because I'm a woman, and like obviously I don't want PCOS or any hormonal problems, but I want to keep my testosterone as high as I possibly can naturally without taking any steroids. Obviously, just like my ovaries can produce testosterone as well if I just give it a chance. And like I supplement a lot with zinc, for example. So zinc raises progesterone and testosterone even in the female body, and that helps me like keep my body fat percentage down, because as soon as estrogen goes up, we tend to be a bit fluffy, and it's not fat, it's water weight. Like estrogen makes us like a little fluffy because it binds to a lot of water. And we can notice that certain times in the month that we tend to swell out because of all the water weight. We can gain like several kilos just in water.
It's funny. I find cholesterol to be the most beautiful chemical structure, like just on paper. Like I love those steroid rings.
Yeah.
And I just love drawing them. They're so symmetrical and beautiful. And you must get to see some really cool things looking, in the lab under the microscope.
Definitely, yeah. I have a dopamine molecule as a necklace on me right now. You have it too?
I'm not wearing it right now, but I have dopamine, and I have 2 other molecules that I found online. That's so cool.
Yeah. I wonder if they will ever sell cholesterol as a necklace.
It's so beautiful. Like I've been trying to get, beta hydroxy butyrate. I haven't found. Yeah, maybe they have like acetone or some other ketone body, but dopamine is a really cool one too. I love the structures, and some of the amino acids are beautiful, but there's something about cholesterol with those rings that it's just such a cool, like satisfying structure to draw the 2 rings together.
That can be some cool merchandise for you.
Yeah, I wonder what percentage of people are on my level of, I don't know how far it goes, but yeah, it would be cool. I should ask people. I was going to ask you, so when people say that they're taking steroids, or they're like if someone's taking steroids in a competition and they're like, are those the same? Are they, so cholesterol, when either our liver makes it or we eat it from eating animal fats, as you were saying, our body makes the steroid hormones out of cholesterol. So when people are taking steroids, does that mean they're like, what does that mean exactly? Hey guys, just taking a really quick break to talk about the 28-day Ketogenic Girl Challenge. If you're interested in doing a ketogenic diet for yourself, it's a great place to start. I teach you everything about how to follow a keto diet to get yourself into nutritional ketosis, and it includes 28 days of meal plans. It comes with weekly shopping lists, how to interpret results, how to test yourself, a complete guide to getting started on keto. If you've been keto for a while and you're just not getting the results that you want to in terms of your health or fat loss, or you are brand new to keto, the 28-day challenge is a great option because it also comes with my free coaching and support in our members Facebook group, and you can post any questions that you have about the meal plans, about keto, and I am there supporting you. We have an amazing community in our group because everybody in there is so excited about following keto, about having found something that really works well for them. And everyone in there is just so kind, caring, generous, and supportive. And it's a really fun place to be and hang out. So if you'd like more info on it, you can find it at ketogenicgirl.com. And it's the 28-day Ketogenic Girl Challenge. And now back to our interview.
Well, they can take pro hormones, for example, or they can take like things that chemicals that the body perceive as sex hormones, like usually different types of testosterone, or so that's basically that just tend to act on the cells as a testosterone metabolite and get that anabolic effect. But the downside is that the body completely shuts down its own testosterone production for the most part, and that's why so many bodybuilders, when they decide to like stop competing, they don't look very good afterwards. When they drop all the supplements and all the steroids, they tend to go back to a much worse shape than they have ever been in their entire life. And I don't really see the value in that. I intend to stay a clean athlete. I think that's important, to really take care of your body and your hormonal health. That's just the most important thing we have, because if we can keep our own hormones nice and high as long as possible, then we can keep young as long as possible. It's really a key factor.
Right. And if you are doing a keto diet and you're getting lots of healthy fats, then wouldn't that be kind of similar? Like you could get a lot of the benefits without having to mess up your own endocrine production.
Exactly. And I think that's so cool, because if we go back to the 1920s or 1930s, I mean, professional weightlifters, their like main biohack was to eat like 20-30 eggs per day. And it was working. This was before the testosterone was synthesized for the first time. So there was no steroids and no synthetic testosterone whatsoever. So they just ate a lot of eggs, and it was working. And why was it working? Well, because cholesterol can't be downregulated. And I think this is so cool, because eggs are so full of cholesterol, and when the body gets a lot of cholesterol, it can't downregulate its own production, and it can't downregulate anything. So we have like just complete overload of cholesterol, and that leads to a complete like upregulation of a lot of sex hormones. So and that explains why, I mean, so many people that turn to the carnivore diet, they start to eat like a lot of animal products and get a lot of cholesterol. They like break PR after PR in the gym. They get so muscular, and I think we can see on like on Instagram people showing off their abs left and right, and they like, oh, I feel so strong now. What happened? Well, it's all that cholesterol. Your sex hormones are through the roof.
That's amazing. I mean, you see and hear about, I know there was one result that came back from a more prominent person in the carnivore space that had really low testosterone, but I think that had to do with like some other physiological mechanism that was happening because of the way it was being read. And there's so many discrepancies, like when it comes to measuring. But I think you are so right that, you're to go from, especially if you've been low fat, and depriving your body of all those egg yolks and all the animal fats for so long, it just explains so much of where we are at, and with people having hormonal imbalance, just as a society. And then you pair that with all this glycation oxidation from, all the glucose, and it's just such a perfectly designed recipe for a lot of the health, metabolic syndrome that we're seeing right now, the explosion of it and all that. You almost couldn't design it more strategically to have this kind of epidemic right now that we're seeing. And according to the latest research, 88% of Americans being unhealthy metabolically, which is so alarming. I was talking to my husband about it this weekend, and I was like, if you put that number into a percentage of actual people that were going to have early morbidity from metabolic syndrome, and you were able to tie that to some country that was going to come in and attack us and kill all these people, or some virus, we would be so up in arms about it. And yet it's such an insidious thing because it's diet, it's such a creep thing. It's such a difficult thing to just point a finger at and explain simply to people and to change because of how we're motivated and how we're wired, and to immediate gratification and rewards versus, long-term health. And I was like, do you think most people would prefer to have shorter lives that have more immediate gratification and pleasure, or longer lives that have less immediate gratification and pleasure, but you're living longer? I don't know. I could get really into the weeds about it. It's just shocking, really, how far off course we've gotten. And then we have these bodies that are brimming with intelligence that just need the right building blocks to be given to them. I think it's so cool that, you've been able to do a lot of work in your books and sharing, your research and your biohacks and all these things. I know have inspired a lot of people, and it's awesome that you're able to share it, because it's so important for people to understand these things, especially with our sex hormones. Like it's so important to have these things functioning properly. And so many men and women suffer from having hormones that are just imbalanced or not functioning optimally.
Definitely, yeah.
I'm curious. I know you tried out Carnivore for yourself, and you were posting and sharing some of those results, and you kind of shifted your keto diet a little bit. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about some of the things you've learned and things you've been trying out and doing.
Yeah, well, I heard about the carnivore diet for about 2 years ago or something, and I thought it was like the craziest thing I've ever heard about. Like, oh my God, this is just crazy. And then I saw like there was a small community of people eating raw meat, and I was just disgusted. Like, oh my God, they must be completely insane. You can't eat raw meat. That's dangerous. I mean, you could kill yourself. And then, well, I got intrigued, and a friend of mine tried it out, and she was just blown away. She was just, oh my God, I have never been so happy in my life. Everything's just working. I have a ton of energy. And I just got intrigued, and I had to try it for myself. I was very confused in the beginning, even though like a low carb ketogenic diet is pretty close to, or it can be close to a carnivore diet. But mine was actually, I used a lot of like vegetables, and also like a lot of coconut oil and avocados, and I did a lot of smoothies and stuff like that. So I didn't eat a lot of meat. Actually, I've actually been pretty protein deficient. I've come to realize that during the keto diet, I always held back on protein. I wanted to be in an optimal ketogenic state. So I never went over 50 grams of protein, which is I found that pretty ridiculous right now. And I mean, I'm working out daily for several hours. I mean, 50 grams of protein, that's like nothing. Like, come on.
Yeah.
So when I started this carnivore experiment, I just, it was, at first I had some problems regulating my blood sugar because I got a lot of, got so much protein, and it's a bit insulinemic. So I got some blood sugar problems in the beginning, but I adjusted to it, and I found that it was pretty nice. It's a very easy diet to follow, and I felt pretty good, even though I gravitate a bit back and forth. I still do that between carnivore and keto because I didn't like being 100% carnivore. It didn't feel like right to me. So I still, like, I learned a lot from the experiment. I learned that I need so much more protein than I thought. I learned that I could be in ketosis even if I increase my proteins. And I learned that I actually feel pretty good on like a lot of animal meat, and I don't need to hold back on it. And I also learned that raw meat is actually pretty amazing. It's you don't die when you try it. It's actually good, and it's a completely new feeling of satiation when you eat raw meat. So I still do that, even though I would call myself more keto to this day, even though or maybe like 80% carnivore or something like that, with some raw meat in between whenever I feel like it. Whenever I find like a nice piece of meat, I can eat it raw. And I've also experimented with like animal blood and like drinking blood, and I was just going completely insane there a while, like eating a big raw liver, and I posted it on Instagram and like lost 300 followers because they were so disgusted. And yeah, so it's been a very fun journey, and I've learned a lot from all these experiments with
Yeah, you went full Maasai there.
Yeah.
When we were there, we were in Tanzania this exact time last year, and I thought I was so hardcore in keto, and I love raw fish, especially seafood, but I'll do some raw beef now too. And I tried raw reindeer when we were in Helsinki for the Biohackers conference last year with like these egg yolks that were also raw. And I think because it was a really nice restaurant, like I felt like they really knew what they were doing. I do worry a bit about parasites, like, and cooking. So like sometimes, like last night I had like ahi tuna, and I'll do like, I'll sear the outside and then have it like kind of half and half. That's the one thing I think that I still need to research more about, is just like, I know you can cook, say like prime rib in an oven and it can stay quite pink, but it's fully cooked through. And so there's no parasite risk. Like, do you know much about that, or?
Well, I don't know much about it, unfortunately, but when I eat raw stuff, I'm very picky with the sources, that it's like locally produced, and that I need to trust the source. I don't think I would eat raw chicken, even though we don't have we don't have salmonella in Sweden actually, so it will probably be pretty safe. But I do eat raw eggs, for example. I eat raw blood, and nothing's that really happened to me since I started doing this. So I lost the fear for it. So no, I don't care much. But I think I wouldn't go to like Denmark and just open a pack of meat from the grocery store and just eat it raw. I wouldn't do that. But
yeah, I feel really good if I get, especially seafood. I'm really comfortable with raw because I lived in Vancouver, and it's like a sushi capital. So I just had so much raw fish over the years. And, from a restaurant that they do like flash frozen wild fish I feel pretty comfortable with. And then if I'm ever going to try like any kind of like reindeer or other things, like I'll do it at a restaurant. Like I feel that knows what they're doing with it, as opposed to just, I have seen people go to like just a store and buy like raw meat and just eat it. And I just don't know like what the food safety is there with, with parasite concerns. I think that probably is something people need to be aware of. Cooking your food does, a lot for it. It does break down nutrients and also like can make it safer in terms of potential parasite content. But I find it amazing just to explore all these different things. And I do find that if I do raw seafood, the satiety from it is crazy high compared to cooked. And I don't know why. Do you know why that? Like it's more satiating when it's raw?
I think that raw contains less calories but much more nutrients than cooked. Cooked gives
that makes sense.
More calories but less nutrients. And what our body really wants is the nutrients of things. Like it craves calories because calories usually means nutrients. But if it's just empty calories, then it will continue to crave and crave and crave until it can fulfill its needs. So I think that when we eat raw meat, we can pick up like a lot of these like micronutrients that we don't get from cooked. And that's why it's so satiating that we can sustain ourselves on very small quantities of meat. It's surprising. Like you said, it's like the satiation is really like, it's a whole new experience. The feeling in the body and everything is really something else.
Yeah, and I can understand that completely makes sense. That, in some ways, a lot of our evolution was tied to being able to cook meat, and, finding fire. And I know there was a connection between that and eating more meat, and therefore our brain, in particular region like prefrontal cortex, expanding, kind of being the region of the brain that is the most recent in terms of its evolution and development. And I know that came from like eating more meat, but I never thought about the fact that you do have some nutrient loss in cooking. So I wonder if there's ways of cooking meat to maximize nutrient retention, at the same time. There's going to be a lot of people who will never eat raw, raw proteins. I wonder if there's a way like to be able to cook it to make sure that it's fully cooked through and food safe, but then also minimize nutrient loss.
Yeah, that would be really interesting.
So what kind of ways do you incorporate plant foods in a way to optimize your diet and health and all the biohacking and keto stuff that you do now?
I'm trying to experiment as much as possible, and I'm going a bit back and forth between vegetables and things like that. So I don't really know at the moment what I'm doing, because I've been trying to increase my carb intake, for example, to improve my sleep. So I've been adding a bit of like sweet potato and things like that, but that didn't really improve my results in the gym. So I went back to keto, and now after my carnivore experiment, I've noticed that whenever I go back to keto, I tend to exclude a lot of vegetables. Like before, I was really picky with getting my broccoli and cauliflower, and like I wanted to have my leafy greens and my avocados and my olives and everything. And now I've been really sloppy and don't really bother with it anymore. So whenever I use vegetables, I use it for carbs. So I pick vegetables with a little higher carb intake, so I can use it for like carb loading, but not much for nutrients anymore, because I've come to realize that maybe there is not so much nutrients that I actually need in vegetables. I mean, I can use broccoli and cruciferous vegetables can be really good for sulfur intake and to cleanse the liver and to optimize your like estrogen to progesterone ratio. So I used to be used to eat a lot of like broccoli just because of that reason, but now I take MSM supplements, like sulfur supplements instead, and I can like max out on sulfur and get the same results without having to eat the damn broccoli. So that's just what I'm doing now. So whenever I have vegetables in any form, it's just for increasing my carbs. But I've also noticed that it's not a favorite thing for me to have carbs. I do it just just to see if there's something I missed in my daily routine, and like, okay, let's have a carb weekend and see what that can give, or things like that.
I think it's so cool that you're so experimental with it and you don't get, too rigid or set in one sort of dogma or approach, because the ultimate goal is to optimize your health. So, you're not going to let yourself be boxed in any certain, label or approach. And I think that's so cool, because you could miss out on learning different things if you, did get too rigid.
Yeah, I mean, people think I'm super rigid about keto and things like that, but it's really not the truth, because I'm very open-minded, and like, I think it's important to not get too sensitive about things, like just stick to one food for the rest of your life, and like then you have a piece of chocolate one day and you die because you're so damn sensitive. It's just not worth it. I think. I mean, what's the point? I mean, I'm fairly young. I'm healthy. I work out. I can handle some carbs and I can handle some junk food. And sometimes it's fun to just shock the system. I mean, I can go to McDonald's and order a meal, but I know it's wouldn't be good for me to do that in the long run. So it doesn't happen very often. But I wouldn't be afraid to do it because I try not to be that dogmatic.
That's really good. That's really impressive. I think it's so cool too that, you're just aware of the nutrient content, of foods. And I remember when I was in university, I took nutrition as my electives again, because I thought, I needed to do finance and not nutrition. And, one of the first things they said in our class is the bioavailability of nutrients in meat, so far exceeds that of the availability and absorption from plants. And there was no bias there. Like, this professor was not I was vegetarian. Mm-hmm. The professor was not carnivore or vegetarian or, plant-based or this, they were just stating the facts of how our bodies break down and absorb nutrients, and also the density of nutrients. And I love, we were talking a little bit earlier about this focus on nutrient density. And when you really look side by side at plant food and protein, for example, I think you were talking about optimizing for nutrients. Like, I think zinc and vitamin C? That's maybe, there's one that's more available from plants, but it's like only one of them. I'm trying to think.
Should probably be vitamin C, yeah.
Vitamin C and vitamin D is lower, I think, but you can get it in liver. But you can also get vitamin C in liver. It basically has every single nutrient that a plant food has.
Yes, correct.
So that's pretty amazing. And it has it in a greater density and more absorbable potential in the body than any kind of plant food, out there. So if you are potentially incorporating liver and maybe oysters, it would be really hard to be missing any nutrients. It's amazing. But that doesn't mean they need to be excluded. Like you said, there are definitely benefits. And I think it's really cool that you're experimenting with sleep. I didn't know that there was a connection there. So it's really cool to see if you're hacking for a particular thing, like you said, staying open to different possibilities and options and routes. And if you do exclude too much, like you said, you can make your body too sensitive because of the microbiome. I think I don't know enough about it, and we're still learning so much about the microbiome now, but your microbiome helps you digest your food, and if you exclude too much, then you're not going to, like you said, you could have chocolate and just like pass out.
Yeah.
So I would never want that to happen. Gosh, I feel like I could ask you questions all day long, but your time is so valuable. I don't want to, be a time hog here. So what are some of your plans projects and things that you're working on, and what are you kind of most excited about right now that we can follow and look out for?
Well, right now I'm working on a new keto book. I've written a few keto books, but they're mostly in Swedish, unfortunately. I have one keto book in English, and I hope to be able to translate more of my books. That's a goal for this year.
Awesome.
I've written a best-selling book on inflammation. It's also in Swedish, but we're working on a translation at the moment. So I do a lot of book writing, and I'm working hard to translate everything into a language that people actually can understand. So that's the thing I'm doing now. And besides that, I do a lot of training that I share on my Instagram as much as possible. So yeah, that's the things going on in my life at the moment. And my PhD, I'm working super hard on this, on my thesis. So that's the things.
That's so fantastic. You're such an incredibly impressive person, and I really have to commend you for, coming on and doing this interview, because like I speak a lot of languages, and there's not a single one that I would do a podcast interview on about keto. Honestly, like even French, and I'm completely fluent, I would not dare do it. So you're incredibly talented person, and I just so appreciate you coming on and sharing so much knowledge, especially about the steroid hormones and all of that. It's just absolutely fascinating. So thank you so much for sharing your time. And if you ever have time in the future, we'll have to, invite you back for round 2, because I know there's going to be a lot of follow-up questions after I post this interview. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing so much of your knowledge with us. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. We had so much fun recording it, and I hope you got a lot of great information out there. So I wanted to personally invite you to join the 28-day challenge if you've been considering it for a while. I would love to have you join us, and you can check it out at ketogenicgirl.com. It is a full meal plan program that also comes with my coaching and support for any questions that you have along the way. And I just love being a part of people's health journeys. If you are brand new to keto, or you've been doing keto for a while and you're just not getting the results you want, I'm here to help, and I would love to have you join our program. So check out the 28-day Ketogenic Girl Challenge. There are some other ketogenic challenges out there that are called the 28-day challenge for some reason. The one that I have available is at ketogenicgirl.com. So be sure, if you're looking to join the challenge, you might see some other accounts on Instagram that are called 28-day keto challenge and that kind of thing. Mine is the 28-day Ketogenic Girl Challenge, and it's only available at ketogenicgirl.com. It's not available anywhere else. So if you are looking to join my program in particular, make sure that you are at ketogenicgirl.com, and feel free to send me an email at contact@ketogenicgirl.com if you have any questions. It's the best way to reach me with any questions about the program, or hit me up through the official Facebook page. If you like this episode, hit like, leave me a review. I would love to hear what you enjoyed from the episode, what you like to hear more of, what your takeaways were. And until next week's episode, I hope you have a fat-filled rest of your week, and thanks so much for listening. A few disclaimers. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as medical advice, as I am not a qualified healthcare provider. The information presented on this podcast is for educational purposes only. Ketogenic Girl is not qualified to provide med advice. Consult your own physician for any medical issues that you may be having. This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to this podcast. Prior to beginning a ketogenic diet, you should undergo a full health screening with your physician to confirm that a keto diet diet is suitable for you and to rule out any condition or contraindications that may pose risk or that are incompatible with the ketogenic diet. A keto diet may or may not be appropriate for you if you have any kind of health condition, whether known to you or unknown. So you must consult your physician to find this out. Anyone under the age of 18 should consult with their physician and their parents or legal guardian.